Hello and welcome to Inside Voices. Today we're going to be talking about all of our trends and predictions for 2026. I'm Joe Hepburn, Insight and Innovation Partner.
And I'm Mundip, Senior Performance Marketing Manager.
Right, in true agency fashion, we have got trends coming up for 2026. We've got 4 to go through today, which we're going to go through in rapid succession. The first one is about the privacy paradox.
What do you mean by privacy paradox? Are we on about consent mode? Are we on about third-party cookies?
Yes.
What do you mean?
All of the above. 76% of consumers express a deep concern for the way in which their data is being handled by companies. And we're seeing that with all of our clients at the moment, aren't we? So we've started seeing multiple clients reach out to us and saying they're seeing not set appear in Google Analytics. They're seeing all sorts of data disappearing from their analytics that they'd normally rely upon to see conversions or user behavior on site. And it's because of people not consenting to cookies. And so the first trend is all about how people are desperate for transparency from brands when it comes to their privacy and their actual data and how it's being used, and how much more willing they are to engage with you if you actually provide them with a value exchange on that. Have you experienced this across any of the clients you've been working on?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen this for a number of accounts. I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that consumers generally are seeing it as, there's been so much noise around data breaches. And I think there's a real element of trust that needs to sort of be built by brands. So we've absolutely seen it across the board.
Yeah, I've been advertised. Have you had a co-op membership in the last 5 years? There's been a data breach. You could be part of a class action lawsuit worth hundreds of millions. I've been advertised the same for my Facebook data. And one of the things that I found very interesting is a few weeks ago, I started looking at my own profile on you'vebeenpooned.com.
What's that?
It's a website that's built to see if your data has been stolen.
Right.
So you can put in your email address or your address or multiple email addresses, and it will show you all the places your data has been breached.
That's
and
scary.
Alongside that, it will show you if your password is visible to the public, of which a password that I've been using for the last 5 or 6 years, which I thought was fine on multiple two-factor authentication. It's got multiple characters in it with hashtags and numbers and upper and lower case, and it's about, I think it's 14 characters long. It's visible publicly. That password is visible publicly. And I've been pooned on about 100,000 sites. It's obscene. It's a really great website. It is free. There is a paid version where you can then remove your hacked data from the web. They'll go out and they'll do it themselves. They'll request for that deletion. But it got me thinking, because we're currently scoping out a huge HubSpot project for a CRM platform for one of our home builder clients. And within that, we're starting to look at how we would do standard operating procedures for people deleting their data. And I would never think of deleting my data. I did it when the Cambridge Analytica scandal happened. I deleted all my data on Facebook, and then all the advertising I got from there was nonsense. And so I've since then really allowed my data to be used, hoping that it would give me more personalization and more relevant ads. But now we're seeing with our clients, like our home builder client, that there's so many people requesting their data is deleted from their database. Not that they're unsubscribed, but if the data is being deleted, that we've had to create standard operating procedures for it and data flow models for it so that we can understand how we keep that data, where we store it, where we have a need to store it for financial reasons and where we legally have to, as well as where we can delete it for them. So customers are becoming far more savvy to the use of their data. And we have seen an update really recently within the Data Protection Act that allows users to, but businesses to change it from opt-in to opt-out again. It's almost reverted a little bit. We had for years Google talking about, we're going to kill cookies. They never did. And then we had, it has to be explicit consent that you have to opt in. And now for first-party analytical cookies, you can actually set it to opt-out. And we've started working with our brands that are relevant for this in a B2B space with a legitimate interest, such as our roof tiling clients of ours, in helping them change the way in which their cookies are reflecting on sites. I mean, it's really interesting that people care about it, but not enough to stop purchasing. And when you remove that data, you remove all that personalization and the elements that make you feel special when you are being advertised to or when you're on a website. So I guess my question to you as the expert on this is, where does server-side tracking fit into this whole consent matrix, with people being angry that ads are rubbish and not relevant, but then angry that people have their data? Where does server-side tracking fit into it? Because it's a word that's thrown around in the marketing sphere a lot.
I think that's a really interesting question, purely because server-side tracking is something that isn't mandatory, but from a digital marketing perspective, it almost should be, because yes, you've got that element of, up to this point, a lot of users don't consent to certain preferences. You've got ad blockers, you've got certain data safe web browsers, and that really leads to a loss of data when you're using standard client-side tracking, particularly when it comes to Google Tag Manager. So server-side tracking is almost that sort of it's almost a buffer between the two. There's almost the ability to fill in some of those gaps, and there's unique IDs that are passed through, which mean that there, despite a user not consenting to certain preferences, there's still anonymized data that's passed through, which means you can really attribute some of those events that are occurring on your website or through your ad activity to certain platforms, which makes it a little bit more tangible to understand exactly what's working and what isn't. Although server-side tracking isn't seen as mandatory, it should be standard practice for digital marketing. And that's purely because, we need to be able to track all those valuable conversions and those events that are occurring from ads, from your website. It's all really valuable, particularly when...
Can I just stop you there? Why is it valuable? Is it just so that we can say these adverts worked, or is there more value to tracking conversions more accurately with server-side tracking?
There's more value to tracking conversions with server-side tracking, and that's because, particularly when it comes to our case, with a lot of our clients, well, with every client, we use data building practices to try and build valuable data that, one, we can optimize from, but then also it's really valuable for audience building, being able to track where users are sort of falling off within the conversion journey. So whether that be a lead or whether it be an actual sale, the premise is the same. We need to be able to track all these valuable customer journeys and these user journeys from which we can then create remarketing audiences. We can model behaviors that then lead to lookalikes and predictive audiences, which we can then leverage in platform.
So server-side tracking, if I'm getting this right from you, is a first-party way of collecting data anonymously, processing it yourselves instead of letting Google do that, or another analytics software. And then from that, we can build audiences and optimize our media and our clients' media towards the more likely behaviors of people who are going to convert, as well as obviously understanding that user journey a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely correct. And the way in which server-side tracking differs to standard client-side tracking is that rather than data being sent directly to, say, Google Analytics or whichever data processing software you're using, rather than it being sent directly there, it's being sent to the server first. And then from the server, which is your unique domain that you'll have, it's then being sent to the platform. So the way in which the data is processed is different, which then means you're not losing data from someone using an ad blocker or a data safe website browser that's really restrictive. So you're still collecting all that valuable data.
So brands should be looking to server-side tracking to increase their performance on their ads that they're running, their processing of data and building of audiences. And as well, it'll allow the consumers still that benefit of the privacy and knowing that their data is anonymized and being clearly and explicitly explained on the website, but gives us all the ability as though it were a nasty third-party cookie, even though it isn't.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next trend that we're going to talk about is something that we've called answer engine optimization for a while now. And unfortunately, it's now been named Generative Engine Optimisation, or GEO. I'm sure it'll be changed again before next year, but in the moment, we're talking about GEO and Generative Engine Optimisation. It's amazing that there's over 60% of people in the UK use AI to shop. Not just to answer whether they need to boil their rice for a certain amount of time, but to actually go shopping. They're using ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grok, whatever it might be, Groks rather, whatever it might be, and Gemini to go shopping. And for Christmas, we've seen a spike in that, unbelievable. A lot of the tools that we use, such as SimilarWeb and Answer the Public, allow us to track the way in which people are searching and the real traffic that comes out of it. And what we've noticed is a massive spike ahead of Christmas of people going, what should I buy my girlfriend? She wears this, she does that. Or what should I buy my son? He likes Roblox, but I don't know what to buy him. And it comes up with a list of things with links to click on. And the people that are showing there are the same people that would show based on SEO if it's Gemini. But on the other side of the coin, you've got ChatGPT, Grok, Perplexity, and all the other large language models that exist that are not using Google's EEAT guidelines. And that's kind of what I want to talk about in this trend is how can a brand optimize their content so that they do show up when people are looking through a chatbot or even just using the AI overview in Google search results.
So it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because that's a question that we're really getting asked by clients all the time. And when it comes to platforms such as ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grok, which you mentioned before, those are all platforms that are opaque. So there's no documentation out there as to how we can rank or how we can train that model. There's no information out there on that. Whereas when it comes to Gemini, so as a Google partner agency, we use Gemini. That is the language model that we use and the platform that we work with at the moment. And it all comes down to the EAT guidelines. So this is expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And this is a framework that Google devised in order to understand which content is going to be valuable for consumers and users of the platform. So when it comes down to this, Google uses these set principles and index pages to understand what is going to be really valuable to users when they're searching on Gemini and looking for a really relevant answer. So this is where it's really important that the pages that you have indexed on your website align with those EAT guidelines. So they need to demonstrate that they're, expert-led, that, it's a trustworthy website, all those valuable elements that we just spoke about. They need to really demonstrate that. And by demonstrating those elements, it increases the chances of you showing within, the AI overview as well as within Gemini. Because you've got to think about it. Gemini and AI overview allow for multiple sources to be cited. So it really gives brands the opportunity to show within the top half and the first fold of the Google SERPs.
Yeah, that's interesting, because whenever we talk about paid search to clients, they always say, I never click on the sponsored ad. I would never click on anything that says ad next to it or sponsored next to it. And yet we know for a fact that 95% of the UK click on the first result on Google as their first port of call. And only a few of them make it through to the second or third. The amount of people that make it to the third page is minuscule. And so we have to follow the behavior. And now the behavior has shifted, because the first result isn't a sponsored result anymore. It's not a shopping feed anymore. It's not the Google answer box. It is AI overview. And so if you want your brand to be prominent within the SERP and you want to take over that first fold, you have to feature in that section. And you're not going to feature alone. It's very rare that you'll feature alone. It likes to feature at least 3 sources, as you said. And so what you're really saying, if I'm right, is if you just take things back to basics, follow Google's documentation and make sure that your website, your store, if it will, even if you're a service industry, your shop that would be equivalent of your shop on the high street, if you make sure it is fitted out perfectly and ready for people to walk into and understand what you sell, and make sure that Google can see that as well from a far distance, you have a better chance of showing on Gemini.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And it also comes down to there are other elements aside from EAT, and some of these are seen as more traditional elements, particularly when it comes to traditional SEO, and that's data markup and schemas. Those are really valuable when it comes to how you structure your pages, because further to EAT, the data markup on a page gives Google the context as to what that page and the information on it is all about. And again, that really supports and bolsters and provides the opportunity for a brand to show within the AI overview as well as Gemini.
Our next section, Mundip, is on the intentional spending and transparency premium, which is a very fancy way of saying stop greenwashing and stop woke washing. We've recently had a presentation on responsible business for one of our financial service clients, and we've been talking about how important it is to not just pretend with huge numbers that you're going to save the world. A lot of brands go out there and they go really big on big numbers and talking to everyone all the time, everywhere, all at once. But the reality is people don't care. It goes straight over their heads. And what people want is real and tangible trust. Brands that are going out there with carousels on how amazing it is that they're saving the seagulls or saving the planet, whatever it might be that their endeavor is, it actually causes the opposite. The more that you shout about things that you're doing on a global scale, the more that you're alienating the general population who want to see something tangible happen in reality. I've got a million stats written down in front of me here about how important this is to consumers and how important consumers find it. But instead of just reeling off numbers like 54% of UK consumers are prepared to boycott brands over misleading green claims, I'd rather just talk about how a brand can build trust in 2026. Because you want to talk about the great things that you're doing. You want to make sure that that's on social, organic, and paid, and website and landing pages. And this is coming from an agency that did the Our Planet website for Jaguar Land Rover nearly a decade ago about their green endeavors and carbon offsetting. How can a brand talk about this and create trust in 2026 without looking as though they're trying to hide something?
So I think it all comes down to brand safety and the placements in which ads are showing for a particular brand. So just as an example, say on paid social, you're using expanded inventory. That means you could show on games, apps, alongside sexually explicit content to a degree. There are so many placements out there that are just not safe for brands. And, we see it time and time again when we take over accounts, for clients. And the first thing we always do is ensure that the inventory that we're using is safe for the brand. And that comes down to either using limited inventory or moderate inventory. Obviously, there's a level of balancing in terms of ensuring you've got enough inventory to serve to. But it really comes down to the fact that we need to show in placements that are safe for that brand. The impact that an ad is going to have, particularly when business is speaking about corporate responsibility, is going to be extremely different if they're showing in low quality, in-app game placements to say if they're showing on the Times or really high quality editorial content. And the weight that holds is very different.
Yeah, I find that as we're moving towards a more AI managed and optimized world, that every client wants you to just be able to leave it to AI to optimize all the placements and all the creative and all the variants and all the different ways. We have real people, and we maintain that this is the right way, sitting and watching those placements. Even when it comes to programmatic, we look at the placement reports. That's the first report I looked at for our Birmingham Airport campaign, was the placement report. I wanted to see where are we actually showing our ads, and that missing link is there quite prevalent in a number of the accounts we take over. And I think that it's the right content in the right space. One of the things I've talked to a lot of our clients about lately is how you actually get benefits from having engaging content on social. You can't just show someone an ad on social anymore with 20% off, buy now, limited availability, 0% APR. It doesn't work in the same way. Not only do you end up in the credit category with limited targeting options, but you also end up with low engagement, which sounds okay. It's an advert. Why would people engage with it? But the reality is that your CPM, or cost per meal, 1,000 people reached, is going to be way higher if you have unengaging content. If you have engaging content, it's way lower. And we've proven this with our Birmingham Airport campaign, where we have content that is more authentic and natural and real in the right placements on stories, formats, and places like that, where you're engaging with content in the like. When we're using that for paid media, it works so much better because we get much cheaper cost per mil, better reach, better awareness and engagement for that content. And then when someone does see an ad in the correct placement of we're on our way to Budapest from 1999, for instance, or something like that, when they've already been looking at flights to Budapest and they want to fly from Birmingham Airport, they're ready to click and they're ready to book because we've shown them the engaging content further up the funnel in the right placement. When you're going through stories, you don't necessarily want to see an ad with a number on it. You want to see content that's engaging. When you're scrolling through Reels, it's the same thing. And that's why it's not so much about brand safety in terms of avoid porn and avoid gaming. It's more about the right content in the right place. So I agree with you, but of course a performance manager such as yourself is going to focus on the performance elements. I do think that authentic content is the key here, and making sure that you have the right content for the platform at the right place. Trend number 4 is all about subscription models. It's about that murky world in which every single millennial is willing to spend hundreds of pounds on subscriptions just to maintain their life and the quality that they want it to be at, me included, a YouTube premium member here. But that subscription model, again, I'm not going to read you off the compound annual growth rates for the subscription model industry. You can read that in the mindset report that will be coming out alongside this YouTube video. Instead, I want to talk about what we all had as a nightmare notification on Teams about 2 weeks ago, was it?
It was, yeah.
When I logged into Facebook, it said, "Would you like to subscribe to Facebook?" And I immediately panicked and thought, oh dear Lord, it's happening. What am I talking about?
This is nothing new. We've seen it happen with so many different platforms. We've seen this happen with Amazon Prime. We've seen it happen with Netflix. And now we're seeing it with Meta and Facebook overall, where you're having to pay this subscription fee in order to not be served ads. And now this really means that brands and advertisers need to take a slightly different approach. And we've been saying this for so many years now, that you need to be omnipresent. And this is more important than ever, purely because not only from a paid perspective, do ads now need to be more engaging, because the users that we're showing to haven't paid that subscription fee, which, to be honest, I think a lot of people are going to pay that. And it's going to mean that our CPMs are going to rise drastically because everyone's just trying to bid and get an impression because it is a pay-per impression platform. So I think that's changing the way in which we approach paid media, but then also by being omnipresent and ensuring that, organic content and all the content that we have to back all of that up, and some of the previous discussions that we had about corporate responsibility and how, the placements that we show have different weightings. That's really important now because it means users are going to see your organic content. They're going to see your content across other platforms. And that really needs to bolster what they're seeing on that platform within Facebook itself.
That makes sense. I think the biggest concern for me is the people who, I think it's 68% of people who are using AI to shop now. My concern came from the people who are using AI to shop are the same people who would buy the new Apple sock for their iPhone. They're the early adopters. They're the people who are keen to take that new technology and go and run with it. They also tend to be the people of a higher net worth. So if we have a client, such as our private jet client that sells tickets starting at about £8,000, their audience are going to be the sort of people who go, £3 a month to get rid of ads? Yeah, all right, fine. Press one button, Apple Pay, done. Don't have to think about it, or PayPal, or whatever it might be. And they're the same sort of people who might start using ChatGPT or Gemini to search for their brands. And if we don't adapt as an agency to the fact that those people are no longer advertisable on Meta and they're no longer on Google paid search, we need to go and find them in other places. Or we need to make sure that the brands that we're working with are showing in AI and have content on Meta that's engaging enough that we don't even need to put money behind it. And so that's the strategy that we've been trying to approach for all of these clients that are sitting with those higher net worth or early adopter style audiences. It's not just the wealthy, it's people who early adopt, and that spreads across the class system. But how do you see it as a limitation for us on Meta? You said that it's going to change our CPMs. Is it going to be drastic, or do you think it's going to be gradual?
That's really interesting because I feel like it's probably going to be gradual as this gets rolled out to more users, because you got to remember it's in beta. It's not accessible to every single user right now. So I think it's going to be gradual. And I think the way in which the degree to which it's going to impact us as advertisers, I think we're yet to find out. I think CPMs increasing is a given the fact that, we've it's basically more competitive. There's a smaller space there, or there's a smaller percentage of impressions that are going to be available. Yeah. And advertisers on average on Facebook increase by 10%. Competition increases by 10% year on year. So I think it's definitely going to be more competitive, which means costs are going to increase. And like you said, I think it's just a case of being omnipresent and ensuring that we're following actual user behavior. So if users are opting out of Facebook paid ads, it's going to be the case that the organic content that we serve out is going to need to have more weighting. It means that the content that we're putting out in terms of optimizing for GEO, that's going to need to take precedence. That's going to need to be a lot more important, and it's multifaceted. It's not a one solution for every problem there. It's going to need to be a tailored approach for each brand.
So let's take it back then. What was our first trend on? Privacy. Yeah, it was about personalization, relevance to the consumer, and transparency within that. That comes down to authenticity and content that we know that they want.
It does.
Trend number 2, Generative Engine Optimisation, or GEO. That comes down to having the right content, back to basics, in the right places, and you'll win. Trend 3 was about transparency premiums with greenwashing, authoritative content, and making sure that the right content is in front of the right people at the right times. And trend 4, talking about subscription models and opting out of ads. We've boiled it down again to making sure that the content that you're serving, that you do have the ability to push out, even if it is just organic on those platforms, is again engaging to get you the best reach. What it really comes down to is that you should focus on creative first. For all of these trends that are happening, whether it be AI or search or visibility, privacy, data protection, data storage, server-side tracking, everything comes back to a creative first approach. The content that you start with needs to have thought into it that feeds across all these platforms. It needs to seed out across these platforms naturally and be right at the start instead of trying to fix all of these individual parts one by one. We've seen it from a number of clients and new pitches and briefs that people are trying to panic and patch something. Let's sort out Generative Engine Optimisation over here. Let's sort out our cookie policy over here. Everyone's giving us little briefs in little places for little bits to fix these issues, and they all amass to larger things. And at the end of the day, if you start creatively first with the right content, what we're saying today and what you've said to me is that authentic, authoritative content is always going to win if it's written correctly at the start.
Absolutely. There needs to be a level of synergy that flows throughout all of it. It needs to be a considered approach. And like you said, it needs to be creative first.
Is your brand ready to align these trends to your Q1 strategy in 2026? If you are, make sure that you like, share, subscribe to this channel for more Inside Voices content, and watch out for the mindset report that we're launching on our website soon.
And don't forget to check us out on Spotify.